Hey, it's Jeff Zito, and thanks for checking out another episode of the Celebrity Jobber Podcast, streaming on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. All past guests and episodes are online at celebrityjobber.com. Please subscribe. Would love a 5-star rating and leave a review. Talk to celebrities before their big break. What was their life like before they became famous? Everybody's story is different, and here we are with John Taffer. You know him from the show Bar Rescue. He's the guy that loses his mind when these guys that own a bar lose money, call him, need his help, and then he comes in and sees you drunk or giving away beers to your friends or doing something stupid and then loses his mind. I think people think that's pretty entertaining, but John is, not as much of a bulldog as he seems to be on TV. We're going to talk about what he thought he was going to be when he grew up, his parents and their business, his first job, his big break. It's definitely one of the most popular shows on cable, Bar Rescue. And the host, John Taffer, is my guest this week on Celebrity Jobber.
The Celebrity Jobber Podcast with Jeff Zito. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, give a 5-star rating, and leave a review. Check out all our past episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you pod. What if these celebrities weren't famous? What would they have become? What was their first job? We're about to find out.
How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. Nice to talk with you.
Yeah, nice to talk to you. So I just was wondering, because I'm a big fan of Bar Rescue, and I'm a big fan of you. Have you ever gotten into a fist fight? It seems like, you get passionate. Sometimes you get pissed. You mix alcohol into the whole routine. And I was just thinking to myself, man, I wonder if John ever came close to blows with one of these guys.
Never. I've never been in a physical fight in my entire life, actually, Vito. Except one time many years ago, this was many years ago, I was running the Troubadour, and it was punk night, and we had Black Flag and Adamant playing that night.
Wow, that's cool.
And a bunch of pogoers were down on the dance floor pogoing, and one of them was swinging a chain, and he was hitting customers with it, and I got into an altercation with him that night in the Troubadour many, many years ago. But no, I've never really been in a fight in my life.
Wow.
I've never been struck. I've been pushed once or twice, but I've never been struck.
I bet you they didn't push you after they pushed you that first time, did they?
No, they didn't.
No, they did not.
When you're in the nightclub business, you tend to have an army around you, too.
Right. So how did this all happen, John? Because I understand that you went to college and studied political science. What were you thinking you wanted to do after school?
Well, I really thought I was going to go into politics, to tell you the truth. Now, looking at the political world, I'm glad I didn't do that. and I started tending bar just as a consequence and fell in love with the social aspect of the bar business. I love people. And I found as I got good at it that I really love helping people. So in the 80s, 90s, I created a consulting company, and I helped people, succeed in business. And it's been very gratifying for me. So Bar Rescue was sort of an extension of that, Vito.
The Celebrity Jobber Podcast with Jeff Zito. Celebrity Jobber.
And tell me, John, you said you wanted to go into politics. What exactly do you think you wanted to do in politics?
Well, I thought maybe I'd be a senator, which I almost became a couple of years ago. I almost ran for Senate a few years ago, but chose not to do it. But yeah, I was thinking that I would probably be a senator or go into politics and try to make a difference in the world. That's
very interesting. And what about mom and dad? Did they have anything to do with food and beverage?
No, my family was in the marketing agency business. We owned a direct marketing agency. So I was always around marketers and people who developed products and ideas and had an entrepreneurial family, which set me up to be a good entrepreneur.
And so, I'm kind of getting this. You're in college, you're studying political science, and then, just like anybody, they go into the bar and restaurant biz because it's cash money, you make good money, and you got in there, and it developed into one hell of a career. What was your very first job?
Very first job was a bartender at a bar in Brooklyn, New York. I don't even remember the name of it. But my very first job when I was 16 years old was I drove a delivery for a liquor store in my hometown on Long Island. And I delivered liquor all night long in a delivery van. And, I look back at those days now and I realize that's when I learned all my brands and learned all about spirits and stuff. So it sort of connects all the dots. But that was my very first job.
That's pretty cool. And John, Bar Rescue has become such like a part of pop culture. And, I think a lot of people can just kind of relate to it, even if they don't own a bar. I mean, look what they're doing. Like we just talked about the government. Look how they're going into the government right now and kind of hacking things because there's fraud and abuse and this kind of stuff. And you can almost say Bar Rescue does and tackles a lot of that stuff. So can you tell me the big break? How did Bar Rescue become what it is today? Was there a particular phone call or a moment? I know it's probably a long story, but I got time.
Sure. I was very successful as a consultant, and I became an owner-operator. One operator of the year, was in a nightclub hall of fame and such. And I was giving a speech at a convention in Las Vegas, and at the end of that speech, somebody came up to me and said, "You should be on TV." I went back to my hotel room and I wrote something up that night called On the Rocks. It was originally a cross between Kitchen Nightmares and Mission Impossible. I'd have files of experts and I'd be dropped in these locations and blah, blah, blah. I had been a consultant to Paramount years earlier for Bubblegum Shrimp Company. So I called my friends at Paramount. I said, do me a favor, could you put a couple of TV people in a room? I want to come pitch an idea. So I drive through the big iconic gates of Paramount and I go to the big board meeting, and ahead of TV, they put all these TV people in a room for me. And I pitched them my idea, and the head of television at Paramount looks at me and says, "John, you'll never be on television. You're not good looking enough. You're too old. The demo is all wrong. It's not going to happen." So I leave the meeting. I get in my car. I drive out of the Paramount gates, and I think to myself, you know what? I'm going to do it anyway. So I shot a sizzle reel myself, sent it to 4 production companies that I had no relationships with. I got 4 out of 4 offers from 4 production companies.
Wow.
Less than a year later, the show premiered then on Spike Network, which later became Paramount, same company, they just changed the name. And now, 15 years later, 272 episodes later, what network am I on, Vito? Paramount.
Unbelievable.
The network that said I'd never be on television. So there's something to be learned in this. Only you can say no to you, buddy. Nobody else can say no to you.
It is. It's so inspiring too, John, because this kind of stuff happens to a lot of people. People get discouraged. They take it the wrong way. You were like, how did you know how to make a sizzle reel? That's pretty complex stuff for a guy that's in the bar business,
Well, I called some friends and I asked some friends what to do, and it should be 3 minutes long, no longer, and it should show your energy and the personality. And I went to a friend's bar, shot it empty, and then I filmed it, and then put it together, and it just goes to show how if you believe in yourself and you believe in what you're doing, you fight it out and you make it happen. And that's the same with my brown butter bourbon. These things aren't easy. You don't just launch these products. It took me 2.5 years to get that product to market and thousands of hours. Taffer's Tavern. We opened it during the pandemic. It's been a huge battle. Now we're opening our 3rd location in Atlanta, and we're opening in Orlando in a couple of weeks, and we're doing great. But none of these were easy. Bar Rescue in the beginning was incredibly difficult to remodel and do all this in 4 days. So none of these have been easy. But every one has been so gratifying that it's worth it.
The Celebrity Jobber Podcast with Jeff Zito. Celebrity Jobber.
And John, tell me, is there a few episodes of Bar Rescue that kind of stick out to you? There's a few that stick out to me, but some that maybe were a little personal to you. Maybe you thought, this guy's a jerk. He's never going to do it, and completely surprise you. Or maybe the other way. You thought maybe something was a no-brainer and it didn't stick around. Is there a few episodes that kind of stick in your mind?
Yeah, both ways, actually. I can think of Sorties. Sorties was owned by Jerry and 3 partners. And Jerry was drunk and completely screwing up the business. And I sat outside with the partners and I said, you guys own 60%. He owns 40%. Go in and do a hostile takeover and throw his ass out of there. So they did. They went in and they took control of the business with me. Very heavy scene in Bar Rescue. And they took the keys and they threw him out and they sent him home. Well, Now Jerry runs that place. He's a dear friend of mine. He's as sober could be. He runs a very successful business. He's head of a race car team, and it completely changed his life. And there was another one where it was an episode I rescued in Nashville. And I felt so good about this guy. I felt, man, this guy, I've straightened him out. He's going to be terrific. At the end of the episode, I'm sitting at the bar. The cameras have stopped. I'm sitting at the bar, and I'm having a drink with his father. And his father looks at me and says, "Don't worry, he'll screw it up." And sure, 3 weeks later, a terrible incident happened, and a violent episode happened. The guy screwed up, and he lost everything. So you never know for sure. Here's what I know, Vito, and it's interesting. When I register with them, when I make a difference, their posture changes. Mm-hmm. They get a bounce in their walk. Suddenly they're positive. Suddenly they believe in themselves again. Suddenly they believe in their future again. It changes their demeanor in such a positive way and such a visible way that I see it when it happens. It's very powerful when you see it. It's very inspiring. And, those hugs at the end, I always say those hugs are just the most inspiring thing in the world. And the people who fight me the hardest, give me the biggest hugs.
Yeah. And it just seems to me, John, from all the years that by the way, 9 seasons of Bar Rescue. New season premieres now on Paramount Network.
The Celebrity Jobber Podcast with Jeff Zito. The Celebrity Jobber Podcast with Jeff Zito.
So it seems to me like the guy that buys a lot of beers for people and the guy, maybe he's got a little bit of an alcohol problem. It seems like those are 2 huge no-nos for owning a bar.
Absolutely. I tell bar owners all the time, if you have friends that come to your bar, if they're your friends, they would want to pay for a drink.
Right.
They wouldn't expect you to give them drinks. Friends don't do that. So don't be an idiot. Don't give these people drink after drink after drink. They're not your friends if they do that. When I go to a friend's restaurant, Vito, if he buys me dinner, when I go, that's great. If I go back a second time and he tries to buy me dinner again, I pull him aside and say, "Don't do it. I won't be back."
Right. Right.
I'm not going to come here if you keep comping me. Don't do that. I'm here because I want to support you. So
right.
That's a friend. I teach them that, a chump does that. Not an experienced person. And, if you were into drugs, Vito, I would say don't go into the pharmacy business, right?
Right. Yeah.
Reach over the bar business, right?
One of my favorite episodes when the horse comes in and takes a dump in the middle of the bar. Of course, when the one guy's, I think they tried to make a strip club. You've had a lot of people trying to make strip clubs out of bars. I mean, geez. I don't know what your blood pressure must be pretty high dealing with some of these people, but I'm a huge fan of the show on the Paramount Network. 9th season of Bar Rescue. John Taffer, real pleasure speaking with you, and good luck.
Thank you, buddy.
All right, John Taffer from New York. His family actually owned a marketing business, so maybe his marketing expertise was absorbed from his mother and father's business. After high school, went to the University of Denver and studied politics. Yeah, political science. He wanted to go into politics. Said he almost ran for senator a few years ago. Can you imagine that guy being a United States senator? How mad he gets sometimes on that show, Bar Rescue. I thought it was pretty interesting that he said he's never been in a physical altercation before. He did note one time when he was at one of his bars, had the legendary punk band Black Flag performing, and there was a situation with somebody swinging a chain around it. He had to go in there and settle everybody down, but no physical altercation. Said he never has been in a fight once in his life. I can't believe that because he's a big guy and he's got a temper, man. He goes from 0 to 60 in like 2 seconds. So his first job was actually as a bartender somewhere in New York. He said he didn't remember the name of the bar. But before that, he even went back a few years prior to when he was about 16. He was a liquor delivery driver. He delivered liquor to liquor stores, a delivery driver. So, if you think about it, this guy has been in the liquor business his entire life, which is pretty incredible. And actually said that those early jobs that he had really taught him a lot and helped him a lot as he became an owner in the bar and restaurant business. And his big break was as he was in the liquor business, he was an owner, operator in many different restaurants and nightclubs. He said he was in the Nightclub Hall of Fame. And he actually became a consultant and very successful. Did a seminar one time in Las Vegas. And somebody from the audience came up to him and said, you should be on television. John wrote the whole concept of his idea and then had a few contacts at Paramount where he went to pitch it a few weeks later and they turned him down. You're too old, you're too ugly, never going to work. He wouldn't take no for an answer. He figured out what a sizzle reel is. So he basically made like a 3-minute trailer of his idea for Bar Rescue. Sent it out to 4 different production companies. He knew nobody at any of them, and 4 out of 4 gave him an offer, which eventually ended up airing on Spike TV, and Spike TV ended up being Paramount Network, the original place that said, you're too old, you're too ugly, it's never going to work. You can't write this stuff, man. Unbelievable, isn't it? Bar Rescue on Paramount Network. John Taffer was pretty successful before Bar Rescue, but a really good lesson. You're in control of your own destiny, and don't let somebody else tell you your idea sucks. I thought it was pretty inspiring. Great episode. John Taffer, Bar Rescue. Love that guy. And thank you for checking out another episode of the Celebrity Jobber Podcast, streaming on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Please subscribe. Would love a 5-star rating. Leave a review. Past episodes and guests online at celebrityjobber.com. You can also follow youtube.com/the@celebrityjobber or on Instagram, celebrity_jobber_podcast. With somebody like John Taffer, he would have been a successful guy who owned bars and restaurants, but probably would never have heard of him unless he didn't take no for an answer. And that's exactly what happened in his case. Great story. So thanks again for checking out another episode of the Celebrity Jobber Podcast. Until next week, I'll see you then. I'm Jeff Zito.